Yibane, we will build it. Olam chesed yibane. We will build this world from love. Yibane, we will build it.
Boker Tov, good morning and welcome to today's Elul Soul Brew. Curated voices from around the world bringing you on a journey through introspection and inspiration leading up to the high holidays. I'm Rabbi Bluth, your host and producer of the Soul Brews with the Beth Tzedek Center for Spiritual Well-Being. Today, we are hearing from my dear friend Danny Cohen. Danny says that he likes to help people be alive. He is a master of feelings and needs of the somatic experience, organic intelligence, or nonviolent communication. I'll let Danny's practice speak for itself. Danny, leading up to the high holidays, what is your soul brewing?
So, shalom. Hello to everybody. What is my soul brewing? Well, what I'm excited to share with you about this morning is regret and remorse, and how regret and remorse can serve as really helpful, precious gateways to reconnecting to the flow of the river of life and realigning with the divine. Why remorse and regret? Those don't maybe sound especially fun or inspiring. Maybe they sound like things that we're supposed to maybe want to get away from, or people talk about having no regrets. Maybe we should try and avoid having regrets or something like that. And yet, for me, because I'm interested in a full and vibrant aliveness, to be touched by life and in touch with deep and rich presence, and a presence that has the capacity to hold and to indwell the varied and full spectrum of flavors and feelings that meet us in life, and to really live a life that is true, of deep integrity and of care. So in that context, regret and remorse I actually find quite helpful. And now in the month of Elul, leading up to the high holidays, we have focus on tshuva and on cheshbon nefesh, the accounting, or the inner accounting. When I was in college, I remember finding myself in an accounting class that I was not especially enlivened by. But I did find that all of the vocabulary, or some of the vocabulary of accounting, was helpful for giving me more vocabulary or categories for the process of inner accounting, taking stock of my life and how I'm living. And I think that there is a way that many of us tend to go up with this kind of reflection process. It can have a certain somber tone that's actually quite inefficient. And I would like to suggest an alternative tone. So when we talk about tshuva, or as the turn or the return, the coming back to alignment, or back to integrity, back to wholeness. I would say we can talk about two approaches. We can talk about moralistic tshuva, moralistic cheshbon nefesh, or we can talk about organic tshuva. Now, what I mean by moralistic tshuva is a tshuva which looks at good and bad. It looks like right and wrong. Maybe we even assume, well, that's what it means to take stock, doesn't it? And unfortunately, I would say that if I have to be bad, if I have to see and look at what I've done and categorize it or myself as bad or wrong, in order to acknowledge something that I regret, or in order to change, then there's a kind of built-in disincentive, because who wants to be bad or wrong? And even if I acknowledge that and I change, or I kind of have the intention to change, it's not a change which is born of inspiration, of being moved to care for life. It can often be this kind of almost self-flagellating or kind of downcast. Yeah, you're right. I was wrong. I shouldn't have whatever. Fill in the blank for whatever it is. I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have spoke that way. I should have. Or I'm a bad whatever, son, father, child, mother, sibling, teacher, boss, whatever it is for you. And you might think that's true, but it doesn't. For me, it misses out actually on something which I think is both more effective and more inspired. So inspired also from the connection with spirit, with the divine. And this more, let's call it, organic approach, I would say that we have this onboard guidance system. And I want to go into a little bit of how that works and how we can work with it. So, like if you have Waze or GPS in the car and you take a turn that goes off the route, and the GPS is calculating, what you were actually aiming for and where you are now, and then it goes, oh, okay, recalculating route, and it recalculates for you to come back into alignment. So we have that on board. We actually have a very sensitive and refined system which tells us when we've actually lost track. It's just that most of us have been kind of educated out of that, socialized to think in terms of right and wrong, rather than to listen to the onboard guidance system, which is actually sensitive to life. So that when I do something or say something, and it doesn't actually match my integrity, or I get the feedback of the impact that doesn't match my intention, let's say for care, then I feel, if I'm in touch with feeling, then I get that feeling of like, oh, that wasn't actually the impact that I wanted to have. That's not what I wanted you to feel from me. Or that doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel really aligned and as an expression of my values, of how I want to be in the world and how I want to be with and towards people. So and I'll go into that a bit deeper in a moment. So it's not that I'm bad, it's that I missed the mark. And actually, in Hebrew, the word for sin is chet. And the original word doesn't carry a moralistic sense. So, for instance, a bunch of years ago when I was in yeshiva up north in Israel, I was in that home of one of my teachers and his son, who was, I think, 2 or 3 at the time, and I made a hoop like this with my hands for him to throw like a ball into, and he threw the ball, and he missed, and he said, hechteti, from the same word of chet, of sin. So what he obviously didn't mean was, I missed the rim. He didn't mean, oh, I sinned. What he meant was, I just missed the mark. I just missed what I was going for. That's what chet means. So when we have acted in a way or spoken in a way which has missed the mark, it hasn't been an expression, let's say, of our care or of our integrity or whichever value it may be, then in retrospect, when we look at that, we might say, we might feel that upwelling of regret or remorse. And then what I would say is actually what we need to do is to just stay with that feeling. That feeling so readily through our socialization goes into stories of how I'm bad or wrong or what I should have done, or maybe there's some defensiveness around it. And we'll come back to the defensiveness in a moment. But what I would say is, if we just let the ripples of those feelings move through our being, and it can be really helpful to do this with a trusted friend or a mentor or in community, so that people we're really holding presence for each other to hearken to the deeper reminder that regret or remorse is trying to reconnect us with. What was it that we were not living or in integrity with before? And as we stay, or as you stay with that kind of vibration, and there's listening, a kind of hearkening to what the ripples of those feelings are pointing to or trying to connect me with in my being. Really what they're actually trying to honor and care for, something that lives in the center of our life, that we really want to be living as an expression of. So for example, just recently, I spoke in a way to somebody I care about, just in a kind of uncensored way. I was just kind of speaking my mind, and it came out in a way which was difficult for him to hear. Now, I don't want to condemn the place from which I was speaking. It wasn't that I don't want to go into these thoughts of, I was being rude or inconsiderate. I was wanting to be heard and to be held in what was alive for me. And I can discern between that underlying motivation, those underlying needs, and the form that I chose to speak. Because what I didn't include in the way that I spoke was supporting and appreciating and honoring this person who I care about. And so my regret or my remorse can help me, if I'm not all caught up in defensiveness, just seeing the impact, holding with care what it is that I was going for, distinguished from the way that I went about it, and then including these values or deep cares which I wasn't caring for. And then I can actually grow through this process of reflection and explore this generative possibility of how I might care both for those original motivations and these other values in a way which are not at each other's expense, and do give care to this person who I care about. So just to wrap up, the end of Masachet Yoma, the tractate which talks about Yom Kippur, there is a teaching the divine, quoting the prophet Jeremiah, calls the divine Mikveh Yisrael. It's the divine is Mikveh Yisrael, which both means a mikveh and it has in the word for line. So ma mikveh metaheret tmeim, just in the way that a mikveh purifies those who are tamei, impure. Afakadosh Baruch Hu metaheret Yisrael. So too the divine purifies Israel. Now, the way that purification happens in a mikveh is if you are totally immersed. So we have to find a way to be totally immersed or totally inclusive of all of our parts in this realignment with the divine. And when we do that, by honoring the intelligence which comes through our systems and comes through our emotions, connecting us to our deep needs or values, then we can practice the practice of tshuva and cheshbon and nefesh in a way which helps us go all in for a life of care. To have tshuva, as trauma therapist Deb Dana says, as a part of a process which helps us feel safe enough to fall in love with life and to take the risks of living. So I bless us all that we hold life with care so that we're able to take those risks, to course correct as needed, and to live lives of deep care and integrity. Good morning to you all.
We will build this world from love. Even now we